The only reason I climbed up into the hayloft was to get away from him. But once I heard the barn doors lock from the outside, I realized too late. I'd trapped myself, and he wasn't walking away. I was 17 when I got the job. Some summer gig on a horse ranch 2 counties west of town, run by a guy named Walt and his much younger nephew, Rick. Everyone knew Walt. He had that classic cowboy aura, tough, silent, deadpan funny. But Rick? Rick gave me the creeps from day one. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't something he did exactly, it was how he watched. Always too quiet, always nearby. He had that look like he was mentally undressing people with his eyes, even when he smiled. The ranch itself was halfway collapsed. Walt was restoring it. The main house was still solid, but the barn was the kind of place raccoons went to die. Rotting beams, broken slats, hay that smelled like mildew. Still, Walt insisted it was worth saving. I showed up each morning at 6. Shoveled stalls. Hauled feed. Fed the 2 horses they still had left. One time, I walked in to find Rick brushing one of them, bare-chested, even though it was like 45 degrees out. I nodded at him, tried to keep moving. "You ever been inside the loft?" he asked, without looking up. I hadn't. Walt told us not to, it wasn't safe. The beams up there hadn't been reinforced yet. Rick just grinned. "Guess that's a no." That night, I heard something in my truck bed as I was leaving. Thought it was a raccoon. Turned out to be a dead rabbit, skin clean, just sitting there. No note. Nothing. I didn't mention it to anyone. A week later, Walt went into town for supplies and left me alone with Rick. He asked if I wanted to help him clean up the loft. Said we'd be done by lunch. I lied, said I wasn't feeling great. He didn't press, just nodded. But the next morning, Walt told me the hayloft was off limits again. Said some tools went missing. The look he gave me after he said it, I think he knew something. Maybe not the whole thing, but enough. I decided that day would be my last. Told myself I'd finish the shift and never come back. That's when Rick cornered me in the tack room. "You don't trust me," he said, not asking, just stating it. I told him I was just here for the paycheck. He stared at me, then said, "You should come see the loft. It's safe now." He walked off before I could respond. I waited 15 minutes, hoping he'd leave. Then I stepped into the barn, just to check if the coast was clear. He was gone. Or so I thought. I climbed the ladder, just to see the damage for myself. There were ropes up there, tied to a beam in loops. Something about it looked rehearsed. Wrong. Then I heard it. The barn doors sliding shut. Then a click. I dropped to my knees and peered through a gap in the slats. Rick was down there, staring up at the loft with a calm that curdled my stomach. "Walt won't be back till sundown," he said. "So we've got time." There are moments where your body goes numb before your brain catches up, like it's trying to protect you from what's about to happen. That's what it felt like as I knelt in the hayloft, looking down at Rick's face. He didn't yell. Didn't move. Just waited. Like he was giving me the first move, to see what kind of game I wanted to play. My hands gripped the edge of the loft floor. I could jump, but the barn was at least 10 feet down, and the floor below was all concrete and rusted tools. If I landed wrong, it was over. I'd be prey with a broken leg. So I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I disappeared into the shadows. The loft stretched deeper than it looked. Piles of moldy hay, some stacked higher than others. I ducked low, staying quiet, and inched toward the far corner where the rafters dipped. I remembered seeing a hatch there once, used to pitch hay bales down into the stalls. If I could find that hatch, maybe I could drop down behind him, make a run for it. But then came the ladder creak. He was climbing. I held my breath. My body wanted to scream, to bolt, but I stayed still. His footsteps were slow, deliberate. He wasn't rushing. He was savoring it. I found the hatch. A square opening near the edge, half covered by an old tarp. I pushed it open as quietly as I could, the rusted hinges groaning just enough to make me wince. Rick's voice floated through the dark. "You know what makes people weak?" he said. "Hope." My hand found the ledge. I peeked down. Clear drop into the stall below. I could do it. I had to. Then I heard him behind me. I turned, and he was already halfway across the loft, a length of rope coiled in his hand. No knife. No gun. Just rope. Which somehow made it worse. I didn't think. I just jumped. Landed hard. My ankle twisted on impact, but I rolled, scrambled to my feet, and sprinted toward the barn doors. They were latched shut with a sliding bolt. I fumbled, my hands slick with sweat. He was screaming now, louder, faster, coming down the ladder. The bolt slid free. I threw the door open and hit the sunlight like it was oxygen, like it was life. I didn't stop. I ran past the fence, past the pasture, straight into the gravel road. Dust kicked up around my boots. A truck honked. Walt. His rig skidded to a halt just feet from me. I was sobbing, pointing back toward the barn, yelling, trying to explain without words. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Walt reached under his seat, pulled out a shotgun, and walked toward the barn. Rick was gone. They found his car abandoned near a bridge 5 counties over. No trace after that. Walt called the cops, of course. Gave them what little he knew. And me? I never went back to that ranch. Never even drove near it again. But sometimes, in quiet places, I hear the sound of rope tightening through fingers. And I wonder how many others said yes when Rick offered to show them the loft. When I stepped through the ranch gate and saw the corral under 3 feet of standing water, I figured the flood had been the worst of it. But the smell coming from the submerged pens told me something else had been trapped there. I was a disaster inspector for a private firm, insurance evaluations, property claims, that kind of thing. It's boring work until it's not. Usually, I'd walk into a flooded house or fire-damaged warehouse and file a bunch of reports. But this time, the call was rural. An old cattle ranch in southern Idaho. Half wrecked by a spring flood. I was the first one on site. The directions took me off the main highway and onto a gravel back road that twisted through empty fields. No cell service. No landmarks. Just barbed wire fences and sun-scorched wooden posts leaning like drunks in a line. When I finally found the place, the front gate was already off its hinges, and the mailbox was buried halfway in mud. The ranch house itself was a skeleton, roof sagging, porch collapsed, windows either blown out or gaping wide. No one had lived there in years. The claim wasn't about the house. It was about the corral. There'd been livestock on the property, according to the report. Cattle or goats. The last caretaker, some guy named Donnelly, had supposedly been tending them before the flood hit. But the adjusters hadn't been able to reach him since. I parked the truck and grabbed my gear. Boots on, clipboard in hand, I walked toward the fence line. The smell hit before I got close. Rot. Sweet and putrid and heavy, like old meat sealed in plastic and left to bake in the sun. The corral was still holding water, probably from the creek that swelled during the storms. 3 feet deep, maybe more in some spots. Barbed wire fences still stood around it, but most of the posts were loose or snapped clean through. I scanned the area. Dead animals, maybe? It'd explain the stench. But I didn't see any bodies. No carcasses, no bones, nothing bloated and floating. Just the rippled surface of the water and a few strands of hay bobbing gently like seaweed. I jotted notes, took photos, circled the perimeter. Then I heard something splash. Not a drip. Not a breeze. Something moved. I froze. There was a narrow feeding shed built alongside the corral, half submerged, the roof just barely intact. The kind of place ranchers used to throw hay from a lofted hatch. Something inside it shifted. I stepped closer, boots squelching through the mud. That's when I saw the hand. Human. Pale. Fingers just barely breaching the surface of the water near the edge of the pen. Not reaching out, just there. Still. I jumped the fence. The water soaked into my boots fast, but I didn't care. I waded toward the body, heart pounding in my ears. Part of me hoped it was an arm from some old mannequin, some garbage the flood had swept in. It wasn't. The closer I got, the clearer the picture became. A man, bloated, face down, tangled in wire near the feeding chute. The water had preserved just enough to make it worse, skin puckered and splitting, clothes heavy and rotted. Donnelly. Had to be. But something about the way his limbs were positioned, it didn't look accidental. Not like someone who fell in and got stuck. His wrists were tied. That's when I noticed the fence gate, padlocked from the outside. Who the hell locks a person inside a corral? My legs nearly gave out as I scrambled back. My brain started running through every angle. Maybe someone else had been here. Maybe he locked himself in somehow. Maybe. Something else splashed. A few feet from me. Closer now. And then, behind me, a voice. Low. Croaking. Almost gurgling. You're not supposed to be here. I spun around so fast I nearly fell, water sloshing up past my knees. No one. Nothing but the sound of wind through broken slats, and that sick sweet stench rising off the water like a living thing. I scanned the feeding shed again, heart hammering, trying to convince myself it was in my head. Just nerves. Just shock. But I knew what I heard. And the water had started moving again. Gentle ripples at first. Then something deeper, pulsing under the surface. Slow and wide, like something large was circling just beneath me. I took a step back. My boot caught on submerged wire, and I nearly went down. I didn't care about the camera anymore. The clipboard. The photos. I just wanted out. Another splash. This one closer. I turned and ran, half wading, half tripping toward the nearest edge of the corral. The water fought me like it wanted to keep me there. Dragged me down. Every step felt heavier than the last. My boot snagged again, and I had to yank it free with a growl. I reached the gate. Still padlocked. But the chain was rusted to hell. I grabbed the bolt and yanked, once, twice, nothing. Behind me, something hissed up from the water. Not air. Not breath. Bubbles. Rising in a tight cluster from where the body floated. I threw my full weight into the gate and felt the bolt give slightly. Again. Again. Snap. The chain broke. I staggered through, dripping, legs shaking. The smell hit harder out here, like it was all concentrated inside that fence. My stomach lurched. I kept moving. Back to the truck. Across the field. Don't look back. But I did. And that's when I saw the second figure. Standing now. Inside the flooded corral. Waist deep in water. Not bloated. Not dead. Alive. He didn't chase me. Didn't move. Just stood there, chest heaving, arms slack by his sides, head tilted like a dog trying to make sense of what it sees. I made it to the truck and slammed the door. My hands were shaking too hard to turn the key right away. I finally got the engine started, threw it in reverse, and tore out of there. I didn't stop until I hit the edge of town. I called my boss first. Told him I was done with rural jobs. He laughed, until I told him what I saw. Then he got real quiet. I called the county sheriff next. Reported the body. The corral. The water. I didn't say anything about the standing man. I didn't want to sound insane. Just said there may be multiple victims. Let them deal with it. 2 days later they called me back. Said they found the body. Confirmed it was Donnelly. Died of blunt force trauma. No sign of anyone else on the property. No prints. No footprints. No car. They asked if I had photos of the second figure. I didn't. I checked my camera. The shots from the corral were all there. Mud, debris, ruined fencing. But not a single photo of the water. Like I'd never even raised the lens. One of the deputies, older guy, local, told me off the record that the Donnellys weren't well liked around there. Had land disputes with neighbors. Some folks even accused them of running illegal fights, dogfighting, livestock cruelty, you name it. He said if someone wanted Donnelly gone, they wouldn't have to look far for suspects. But me? I can't stop thinking about that second man. How still he was. How he didn't blink. Like he wasn't afraid of being seen. Like he'd been waiting. I only took the job because it paid double the usual rate. But when I found human teeth mixed into the sawdust pile behind the barn, I realized I wasn't renovating an abandoned ranch. I was cleaning up after something. I'm a carpenter. Mostly framing and renovation work, kitchens, decks, small custom cabins. Nothing glamorous. So when I got the call about restoring a rundown ranch out near Red Mesa, I almost said no. But the guy doubled my rate before I even opened my mouth. Said he needed it done fast. Quietly. Said he had blueprints from the original homestead but no crew, and the whole thing had to be done under the table. No permits. No county visits. Just me, the wood, and the tools. It didn't sit right, but a paycheck's a paycheck, and I'd been behind on rent for 2 months. So I took it. The property was about 40 minutes off the main highway. No marked roads. Just GPS coordinates and a wooden stake with orange tape fluttering in the wind. The ranch itself was skeletal, just the house frame and an old barn leaning like it wanted to collapse. The rest was dirt and dry brush. No cattle. No fencing. No signs of life. The guy I was working for said his name was Vince, only showed up once. Dropped off a box of tools, pointed to the barn, and said that's where the original lumber was stored. I asked where the plumbing lines were, the septic, electric. He just said, "Don't worry about any of that." Then he left. I spent the first 2 days just clearing debris, scraping out half-rotted insulation, tossing rusted nails, patching old joists. It was hot, dry, and smelled like piss and pine sap. The barn was packed tight with junk, rusted chains, cracked glass, old farm gear, and a pile of sawdust taller than I was. That's where I found the teeth. I was shifting the pile with a shovel, trying to free up space to set my tools, when I noticed the glint. White, small, almost polished. I picked it up. Not a pebble. Not ceramic. A molar. A human molar. I dropped it. Started digging through the rest of the pile. Found 3 more. 2 cracked, 1 still root intact. They weren't old. No yellowing. No rot. Just clean and wrong. I told myself maybe some hunter dumped a carcass here. Or maybe it was some kind of animal tooth, boar maybe? But the moment I googled human molars and saw the exact same shape staring back at me, I knew. I should have walked then. But I didn't. Stupid curiosity kept me there. That night, I camped out in my truck, windows cracked, tailgate down, cooler by my side. Figured I'd finish the demo work in the barn and bounce in the morning. No need to make it dramatic. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. Not an animal. Not the wind. A grinding noise, rhythmic, slow. Like something heavy being dragged over dry wood. I grabbed my flashlight, climbed out, and swept the light across the barn. The door was open. I was sure I'd shut it before going to bed. Positive. I approached slowly, every inch of my skin prickling like it knew better than I did. Inside, the sawdust pile had collapsed. At first, I thought it was just settling, but then I saw the drag marks. Something had been pulled out from beneath it. Something big. And the teeth? Gone. I should have left. That night. That second. But I didn't. I told myself maybe animals had gotten in. Coyotes, maybe. Dug around in the sawdust and dragged out an old carcass. Teeth scattered. Problem solved. But deep down, I knew better. I backed out of the barn slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. The night was dead quiet. No insects, no wind, no rustling brush. Just the distant crackle of something shifting inside those sagging walls. I got back in my truck and locked the doors. Didn't sleep. Just stared at the barn and waited for the sun. Morning didn't help. In the daylight, the drag marks looked worse. Whatever had been buried in that sawdust hadn't been small. I followed the path with my eyes. It led toward a half-collapsed tool shed beside the barn. A place I hadn't bothered with yet. I didn't want to go in. But again, curiosity, stupidity, ego. Take your pick. I opened the shed door. Immediately, the smell hit me. Rot. Real rot. Not roadkill. Not old meat. The kind that sinks into your lungs and settles there. The inside of the shed was a disaster. Dirt floor. Rotted shelves. But near the back wall was something I couldn't make sense of. A trench. Narrow. Just wide enough for a body. Freshly disturbed soil sat in two long mounds, like someone had dug something up, or buried something else. And at the edge of one mound? A boot. Half buried. Still laced. I didn't get closer. I walked out and called Vince. Straight to voicemail. I texted him. I found a boot in the shed. Teeth in the barn. Not doing this. Send someone else. No response. I packed my things. Tossed everything into the bed of my truck. Slammed the tailgate and turned toward the front of the property. And stopped. There was another man standing there. Not Vince. You know that jolt you get when your brain takes an extra second to process what your eyes see? That was this guy. Gray hoodie, jeans stiff with dirt, wide shoulders, hands at his sides like he was deciding what to do with them. He didn't say a word. I climbed into the truck. He started walking toward me. Fast. I floored it. Tires spun in the gravel before catching, and then I was gone, teeth clenched, heart hammering, windshield streaked with mud. I didn't look back until I hit the main road. He wasn't following. But I drove an hour before I stopped again. That night, I booked a motel. Somewhere far. Somewhere with locks and lights and people. I didn't tell the cops, not right away. I didn't want to be connected to any of it. I didn't want someone showing up at my door in the middle of the night with rope or a shovel. But 3 days later I cracked. Called the county sheriff and gave them everything. Address. Vince's name. The shed. The trench. They called me back 2 weeks later. Said the ranch was empty. The shed was burned to the ground. No boot. No teeth. No sawdust. No Vince. They said there was no permit record. No land deed transfer. The parcel wasn't even listed under that name. It was just undeveloped land, sitting in a blind spot between counties. But I know what I saw. I still have one of the blueprints. Took a photo before I left, just in case. There's something odd about it. The barn layout doesn't match the actual structure. Neither does the main house. It's almost like the drawings were for something else entirely. Something beneath. I wonder if that's what I stepped into. A cleanup job. A burial site in disguise. A bad chapter someone paid me to erase. Next time you pass one of those old ranches half sunk into dirt and memory, you might think it's just a relic. Harmless. But some places? They're left behind for a reason. We only hiked out to the old Firewatch post because my cousin wanted to shoot drone footage. But when we found the ranch beneath it, with no road in or out, I realized something was wrong. Especially when we saw the smoke, and no fire. Every summer, my cousin Max drags me on some half-baked adventure for his YouTube channel. Drone flights, lost places, amateur exploring. Normally it's just overgrown cabins or rusted-out trailers. Stuff locals already know about. This one was different. He'd heard about an old Firewatch tower east of Glen Fork, abandoned since the 80s. Supposedly the hill it sat on used to overlook a working cattle ranch, but it had been left to rot decades ago after a flash flood cut off the road. No one rebuilt. No one cleared the path. He wanted sunrise drone shots. I wanted a weekend off. We left before dawn with our packs, cameras, and enough energy bars to survive a short apocalypse. The trail was steep, matted leaves, rocks slick with dew, switchbacks too narrow for anything bigger than a dirt bike. No cell service for miles. By the time we reached the top, the sun was clawing its way over the trees. The tower loomed overhead, charred legs, warped beams, and a rusted spiral stair. It looked like a structure trying to forget it ever mattered. But the view? Insane. From that height, we could see over the treetops, past the gulch, even into the long-forgotten basin below. That's when we saw it. A ranch. Nestled at the edge of a low valley. Tucked so deep in the trees it looked like a secret. The roof of the barn had collapsed, but the main house looked fine. Too fine. Shutters on the windows. Intact porch. A truck in the drive. But there was no road. No tire marks. No path. Just thick trees and dense overgrowth. And then smoke. Thin, gray, coiling from the house's chimney. I looked at Max. Thought this place was abandoned. He zoomed in with his lens. That truck looks brand new. Where the hell's the driveway? He shrugged. I felt my stomach clench. Max, of course, wanted to go down. He wanted context shots. Maybe a quick peek around the property, even though there was no legal reason to trespass. But there was something about that ranch that chilled me. The way the smoke rose without flickering, like no one was tending it. The perfect stillness of it all. Still, I followed him. It took an hour to reach the base of the hill and push through the brush toward the clearing. I kept waiting to find tire tracks, an ATV trail, something. There was none. The forest had reclaimed every inch, except the ranch itself, which sat in a perfect, cleared oval, like a bubble of preserved time. And it was silent. No wind. No birds. No insects. Just the house. The truck was coated in dust, but the windows weren't fogged. The paint wasn't sun-bleached. Like someone washed it regularly but never used it. Max moved to the porch. I stayed back. He called out, loud enough to echo. Hello? Anyone home? Nothing. He climbed the steps. I wouldn't. I started. But he was already at the front door. He knocked. Called again. Still nothing. I walked around the side of the house, drawn by instinct more than reason. That's when I saw the horses. 4 of them. All dead. Lying in the shade beside the barn. Necks twisted. Flies buzzing. But no scavengers. No blood either. Like they just dropped. And inside the barn? A camera. Mounted on a wooden post. Blinking red. Recording. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped over one of the horses. A camera. Recording. In a barn with 4 dead animals, no tracks, no road, no explanation. I called out to Max, my voice barely carrying. Hey, we need to go. Now. He didn't respond. I rushed back toward the house. The door was open. Just a crack. I pushed it wide. Max? The living room was spotless. Like model home spotless. Hardwood floors so clean they shined. Furniture arranged with eerie symmetry. A couch and 2 chairs faced a flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace, which still billowed smoke up the chimney, though there were no flames in the hearth. Just glowing embers, too perfect to be unattended. And the air? Pine cleaner. Fresh. Strong. Masking something. I crept deeper in. Max? That's when I heard it. Upstairs. A creak. Slow. Deliberate. Then silence again. I hesitated. Every cell in my body begged me to turn around, but I moved forward anyway. Something about the silence felt staged. Like a held breath. Like a waiting thing. The staircase creaked under me as I climbed. 1 step. 2. Then a voice. Max's. Muffled. Hey, I'm up here. Found something. I relaxed, barely, and reached the landing. Man, don't disappear like that. He was in the back bedroom. I stepped inside. He wasn't holding a camera. Wasn't looking through a window. He was standing in front of a wall covered in screens. 6 of them. Flat panels. Mounted in rows. Each playing a silent, grainy feed. All from different angles around the ranch. Barn. Driveway. Porch. Hallway. Bedroom. And one of them, One of the screens was showing me, standing beside Max. I turned around fast. No camera in the room. No lens. Nothing. Then I saw Max's face. Blank. Unblinking. Like he was seeing something I couldn't. "Max?" He didn't respond. His hands started shaking. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the drone controller, snapped it in half without blinking. I stepped toward him. "What are you?" He turned his head and stared at me. Not confused. Empty. "I think," he said, voice flat, "we're supposed to stay." I backed out of the room. Ran down the stairs, feet pounding like gunshots. I hit the front door, yanked it open, and froze. The truck was gone. Vanished. I turned toward the barn. The horses? Gone. Like they'd never been there. Just dry grass. Flattened. And the camera that was recording? Ripped off the post. Wires dangling. I ran. Didn't care where. Just away. Into the woods. Through brush and thorns and biting air. I didn't stop until the trees broke open and I hit the trailhead again. That night, I drove until my tank hit fumes. Slept in the cab of my truck behind a gas station. Didn't go home. Didn't answer calls. Max never followed. Never contacted me. 2 days later, his YouTube channel posted a new video. No title. Just the footage from the ranch. Drone shots. Then barn shots. Then inside the house. And at the very end, a still frame of me, standing beside Max in that upstairs room. Except my face was blurred out. And the file name? Subject_05. The brand wasn't what scared me. It was what had been burned into. Not cattle. Not wood. Flesh. Human. And the worst part? The skin was still warm when we found it, but there wasn't a body in sight. I wasn't supposed to be out there. Bellwether Ranch was condemned 20 years ago, maybe more. Locals said a wildfire ate the whole property. Others whispered darker rumors. Animal cruelty, a family feud that turned bloody, missing drifters. All the usual small-town fuel. Either way, the place was off limits. But my friend Levi? He didn't care about rules. He just wanted a cool backdrop for his indie horror short. I was the one with the camera gear and the truck. That's how I got dragged into it. We drove out on a Friday afternoon, followed the faded road signs until even the gravel gave up. The last mile was nothing but cracked earth and tire-eating ruts. The truck groaned as we crested the last rise. Then there it was. Bellwether. What was left of it? The house was a blackened husk, barely a silhouette of its former shape. One barn had collapsed entirely. The second, still standing, leaned like it had arthritis in the beams. Everything was overgrown with sawgrass and bramble. But there was a fence. A new one. Barbed wire. Stretched tight. Posts driven deep. Rustless. Recent. That's when I should have called it. Turned around. Instead, we climbed through a gap where a tree had crushed the corner. "I thought no one came out here," I muttered. Levi laughed. "Maybe someone's fixing it up." It didn't look like that. Inside the barn, the air was thick. Hot. Like the roof trapped all the sun and none of the wind. Dust motes danced in every flashlight beam. Tools hung from the walls, old, worn, but organized. A workbench stood at the far end, and behind it, a branding iron. Freshly used. Still sitting in the coals of a long-dead fire pit, its tip stained black. The shape wasn't a ranch logo. Not initials. It was a symbol, almost tribal, but wrong. Crooked. Asymmetrical. It made my teeth itch just looking at it. Levi was fascinated. "This is perfect," he whispered, eyes wide. "We can build the whole story around this." He reached for the brand. I grabbed his arm. "Don't touch it." That's when we saw it. On the ground, behind the workbench. A piece of skin. Not torn. Not ragged. Clean. Square. Like it had been cut out. 4 inches across. tan, still glistening. The brand was scorched into the center. And it was warm. I reeled back. Levi stepped closer. "I think it's human," he said, like he was identifying a piece of driftwood. "I think we should go," I hissed. But he kept filming. Kept circling. Kept narrating into his mic. That's when the barn door slammed shut. We both jumped. No wind. No footsteps. Just the sound of splintered wood locking us in with something we hadn't seen yet. Then, from outside. Whistling. Off-key. Slow. Approaching. Someone knew we were there. Levi whispered, "Did you hear that?" I didn't answer. Just grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a rusted stack of hay bales near the far wall. The whistling kept getting closer, dragging across the empty field like wind through bone. I'd never heard a tune sound angry before. We crouched, barely breathing. The barn door creaked open again, slow this time, like someone wanted us to hear every inch of the hinges scream. Then footsteps. Boots. Heavy. Deliberate. Whoever it was didn't say a word. Just walked in, stopped near the branding pit, and let the silence rot between the walls. I peeked between two bales. He was tall. Too tall. Wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face, and a leather apron stained dark across the chest. One gloved hand held the branding iron, still smoldering somehow, and the other? A belt with tags. Not cattle tags. Dog tags. Military. Worn. Dozens of them. He stood there for what felt like forever, staring down at the flesh square Levi had spotted. Then, he bent down, picked it up gently, and slipped it into a small pouch on his hip. Like it belonged to him. I yanked Levi's sleeve. We crawled, slow, silent, toward the back of the barn. There was a crawl space under the side wall. Maybe wide enough to squeeze through. Levi was shaking. Finally, he whispered, "Why the hell is he branding people?" I didn't answer. We got to the crawl space, dropped to our bellies, and started wriggling through. Dry dirt scratched my face. Cobwebs clung to my arms. I heard the boots again, closer now. Then the whistling returned. Same tune. Same slow, broken rhythm. I got through first and turned to help Levi. But he wasn't there. Just an empty space behind me. And then, his scream. It cut off in half a second. I bolted. I didn't look back. Made it to the tree line, hopped the broken fence, ran until my chest burned and my legs went numb. Only stopped when I hit the road. No service. No Levi. No sign anyone had ever been there with me. I drove to the sheriff's office the next town over. Told them everything. They sent 2 cruisers. An hour later they called me back. Said they found the barn. Said it was empty. No branding iron. No workbench. No tags. Just an old, hollow shell with charred beams and rat droppings. No evidence anyone had used it in decades. No Levi. I showed them the drone footage from earlier, the one clip Levi uploaded before the signal dropped. But it was gone. Deleted. Not by me. The only thing left in the cloud was a single still frame. The barn. Front-facing. And in the shadows of the doorway? That man. Half-lit. Holding the brand. Staring into the lens. Like he knew we'd come. They told me it was probably staged. Maybe Levi was pulling a stunt. "Kids do this kind of thing all the time," they said. But Levi never came home. Never posted again. And last week? A package showed up at my doorstep. No return address. Wrapped in brown butcher paper. Inside? A square of leathered skin. Branded. And warm.